Hello and welcome to today's video. This is the 7th video in my alphabet challenge recommendation videos that I'm doing, and because it is the 7th video, that of course means that we are doing the letter G. So all the books that I talk about in this video will be books that I've read and would recommend that begin with the letter G and would therefore fulfill the prompt for the letter G in the alphabet challenge. If you are here and you do not know what the alphabet challenge is, first of all, I will link up above for all of the alphabet challenge videos that we've done. There's a full playlist now of A to G, and we will keep on going until we get all the way to Z. But the alphabet challenge itself is a challenge where you write A to Z out. Well, you don't have to write it out, you could use a template, there's loads of stuff going around, it's everywhere. And you essentially set yourself a period of time. Now this could be until it's finished, this could be a year, that's what I personally do, and I think what most people do is like a standard like calendar year, but you know, depending on how you read and your reading taste, you can completely change it up to suit you. And then what you essentially do is every time you read a book, if it begins with a letter of the alphabet, then you put it in for that letter of the alphabet, obviously assuming you haven't already fulfilled it. So for me, a rule that I stick to, and I think a rule that a lot of people stick to, is that if the book begins with the or a, then it doesn't count. So for instance, The Maze Runner wouldn't count for T because it's the, but wouldn't count for M because it's got the in front of it. So that's, you know, it's not a rule that everyone does, but I am aware that that is a rule and it is one that I stick to. And for this recommendation video, all of the books that I am going to be talking about are either standalones or first books in series, which means that any of these books can be picked up by anyone at any time. You don't need to have read anything beforehand, we can just go straight into the reading. Now I do normally try and do quite a variety of genres when I do this to try and apply it to as many people as possible, and I do still think that there's lots of books here that like a large variety of people would like, but I will say they are all either fantasy or like fantasy adjacent. So we've got like a mythology, we've got a middle grade magical realism, maybe it's got ghosts, so I'd say magical realism. We've got a fantasy romance, a fantasy, and like a young adult vampire fantasy. So they are all very much in the fantasy realm today, but I really thoroughly enjoyed all of them. And to be honest, like when I've been looking for books that fulfill the letter G, they've just all ended up being here. And today I'm going to be telling you about 5 books that I think would work and I would genuinely recommend, and I'll tell you a bit about them, why I'd recommend them and why you might like them. So yeah, let's just talk about the books. I think the first one I'm going to talk about is Goth Girl and the Ghost of a Mouth. This is the first book in the Goth Girl series, and this is a middle grade series by Chris Riddell, who also does all of the illustrations throughout. Now this is just a really fun time, I would say. If you've ever read any of like the middle grade books, like Amelia Fang, Goth Girl, I think there's one that's like Ophelia something, it's like the same sort of thing. So in this one it says, meet Ada Goth. She lives in the ghastly Gorm Hall with her father, Lord Goth, lots of servants and at least half a dozen ghosts, but she hasn't got any friends to explore her enormous creepy house with. Then one night everything changes when Ada meets a ghostly mouse called Ishmael. Together they set out to solve the mystery of the strange happenings at ghastly Gorm Hall and get a lot more than they bargained for. It's just a very fun like middle grade adventure type story. There's just lots of things to solve, lots of things to figure out, and we just go along on that journey and have a good fun time. Personally, I read this around like Halloween time. It does definitely have those like slightly creepy vibes that aren't really that creepy because of like the age range that it's for, but it still really works. And the illustrations in this book are also absolutely stunning and definitely worth the read even just for the illustrations. So yeah, that is my first recommendation. Then we have an oldie but a goodie. This, so many people will have read this growing up, I think, well at least if you're my age, and I haven't even finished the series yet. It's a 15 book series, but book 1 absolutely amazing, and that is Glass Houses. This is the first book in the Morganville Vampire series. In this series we have Claire Danvers, who is going to college and very quickly has to leave her college dorms and find a house that she can live in, and when she moves into this new house very quickly learns that vampires are real and they rule the town of Morganville. It is so good, it's so much fun. We have Claire and her 3 hostmates are the main ones that we follow in, but we have lots of other weird and wacky characters that come along the way. Did it say anything else on the back that I haven't said? Not really, no. And I think it's so much fun. It's such a fun series. Like, I read it growing up, I read it as like a teenager, which is like, I feel like the target audience, but I've also, you know, I'm still reading this series. It's one that I continue on now, and I still have such a good time when I read it. It's just very easy. It's one of those books that, like, when you pick it up you can just keep reading. Like, it's very like bingeable, and we just have such a good time with, like, you know, like, we mainly follow Claire, but we also see all of these other weird and wacky characters, and I have favourites that I can't even tell you about because, like, obviously this is just book 1, but I feel like it really opens up the world really well, really introduces you to everyone and sets you up for what to expect for the rest of the series. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Glass Houses. Then another YA fantasy series, but personally I just feel like this is for any age. Like, yes, it is YA in terms of, like, there's not that much violence, like, there's nothing graphically told, but it's so good. So this is Graceling. This is the first book in the Graceling Realm series, and in the Graceling Realm you eventually have these people. Oh, one thing that I will say is I'll put in a couple of alternative covers here because there's just so many covers for this series and they all look so different. You might spot them and not even know it's the same book because, like, they're so different. But yeah, in this series you essentially have people with graces, and these people are either born with or very early on in life develop 2 different colour eyes, and this basically sets them apart. It tells people they have a grace, but just because you have a grace doesn't mean that you know what it is. You know, you have to figure that out. You have to try and solve it and figure out what that grace is. And also along those same lines is, like, the graces are very specific. So for instance, you have a grace of archery. You're just perfect, you're amazing at archery, you can do it all. But just because you're good at archery doesn't mean that you're good at, like, hunting. Like, they're such different things, and, like, the graces are so specific, you're just naturally good at this one specific thing. And yeah, it's a really good book. I loved book 1, and after book 1 I immediately picked up book 2. It was such a good series, and I'm about to read book 5 in this series this month. Book 5 has eventually come out in paperback, because even though this one is quite old, like, this was released in 2008, but the series is still ongoing because we've had a time jump, and in book 3 we have quite a big time jump which kind of fills in the gap that we've seen. Book 2 is also a prequel, so book 2 takes place way before this one, but it's such a good time. Now, I don't think I've actually read the back of this for a long time, so what I'll do is I'll read the back of book 1 now, and we'll go exact into what this says and how it's trying to get you in. In a world where people born with exceptional skill, known as a grace, are both feared and exploited, Katza carries the burden of skill even she despises, the grace of killing. Feared by the court and shunned by those her own age, the darkness of her grace casts a heavy shadow over Katza's life. Yet she remains defiant. When the king of Lilith's father is kidnapped, she investigates and stumbles across a mystery. Who would want to kidnap the old man, and why? And who was the extraordinary graced man whose fighting abilities rivalled her own? The only thing Katza is sure of is that she no longer wants to kill. The intrigue around this kidnapping offers her a way out, but little does she realise when she takes it that something insidious and dark lurks behind the mystery, something spreading from the shadowy figure of a one-eyed king. With elegant, evocative prose and a cast of unforgettable characters, Kristen Cashore creates a mesmerising world, a death-defying adventure, and a heart-racing story that will captivate you and leave you wanting more. Yeah, I completely agree with that. If that sounds good to you, read it. It's great. I love this series. I love this book. Book 1, impeccable. 5 stars. Amazing. And that's the truth for every book in the series. Then the next book I'm going to recommend is marketed as a fantasy romance. I would like to state that in book 1 it is not. In book 1 it is just like a very dark fantasy, and I do think that you should know that going in. Like, there is no romance in this book, there's no fun time, there's nothing. Like, it's just a very dark story about someone's life and a very fucked up life. So that book is Guild This is book 1 of the Plated Prisoner series. Now, I will say I am halfway through book 2 of this series and we are starting to get lighter. So just, if you need to know that we are going to get like, you know, a little bit lighter, a little bit nicer, a little bit better of a story than like this dark thing. I am halfway through book 2 and we are starting to see that, so I do think we will eventually get there. But this book is just dark and upsetting, and it's just literally a book about abuse, and yeah, our main character is really in that and doesn't see it, which I think is the worst part of it. So yeah, just be careful going into this, read the trigger warning to make sure that you are mentally okay to go into this and read it, because it is very dark. On the back of this one we have, this is a story of King Midas, or that's what we're told, the golden king with his palace of riches and me, the girl he turned to gold. Upon the snowy mountains of the 6th kingdom of Aria, I'm locked away in Highbell Castle, away from the dangers of the world below. No one can get in apart from him. King Midas rescued me from the streets. He gave me food, shelter and his heart. I promised to love him forever. But when war comes to the kingdom, a deal is struck and I am the heart of the bargain. Everything I know starts to change. My love for Midas challenged, my trust broken. Suddenly I'm sent to travel between kingdoms to a future I no longer understand, and my spirit becomes truly tested. I'm always told this is his tale, but perhaps that is no longer the case. It's mine. This is a story of Oren. So yeah, I honestly, it was very good. It was very captivating. I read this so quickly. It was a good story. The writing was good, the world building, and you just feel so much for this main character. But even though it was like easy to read in like that sense, is like it just kept you gripped and kept you going, it's not an easy story to read because it is just so difficult, everything that's going on. So look after yourself, but if you do think that you'd like this, then I definitely do think it's a good book. And then last but not least, the only books that I don't own is a mythology book, and this is the shortest, tiniest little book. So even if you don't love mythology, even if you don't, you know, always pick it up or, you know, care for it, this could be a perfect book to even like test that out, figure it out. So this is Galatea. This is a very tiny, I think it's about 40 pages, and it's so good. I couldn't believe how good this was. So I read this and it's actually made it a lot easier for me, because I've not yet picked up The Song of Achilles or Circe because I think they're such like daunting reads, but I really like the writing style of Galatea, and it's the same author, so it has made me more likely to pick up the others. Again, this is, you know, like not an easy story. It's mythology, you know, it's all fucked up, but it's a story with, I wouldn't say hopeful ending, but it's a story where the ending is pleasing to the reader, I guess. I don't know, it's very difficult to talk about. It's only 40 pages. I don't want to ruin anything, and I really don't know how to talk about this. I would say it's a mythology book that I recommend. It's very small, it's very easy to read, it's very simple, and it's a very lovely retelling in the fact that I don't think it takes place for more than like 2 or 3 days, but we see so much and we understand so much. So I'm just going to get the actual description up because I really don't want to risk spoiling it. An enchanting short story from Madeline Miller that boldly reimagines the myth of Galatea and Pygmalion. In ancient Greece, a skilled marble sculptor has been blessed by a goddess who has given his masterpiece, the most beautiful woman the town has ever seen, the gift of life. Now his wife, he expects Galatea to please him, to be obedience and humility personified, but she has desires of her own and yearns for independence. In a desperate bid by her obsessive husband to keep her under control, Galatea is locked away under the constant supervision of doctors and nurses, but with a daughter to rescue, she is determined to break free, whatever the cost. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. Well, 4.5, but like rounded up to 5. It was good enough that I'd be happy to call it a 5-star read. Personally, it was just a little too short for me to like truly be involved. Like when things happened, I was just a bit like, okay, just not connected enough yet, but still a really good time, still a really good read, and I would really recommend it. So yeah, if it sounds good to you, pick it up. And those are all of my recommendations for the letter G, to fulfill the letter G in the alphabet challenge. I really hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you've watched this and have any other recommendations for books beginning with G that I didn't mention, that you'd like to recommend, that you think are good books that people should check out, that I should check out, that anyone should check out, do leave them in the comments down below so everyone can see them and we can just keep this as like every sort of ongoing recommendations. But yeah, that's it from me today. I do really hope that you enjoyed the video. Please do give it a like if you liked it. Subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!